California conservative, a libertarian, a moderate Democrat, believe in common sense, or just a sane person, this is the political podcast for you. It's the California Underground Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the California Underground Podcast. I am your host, Phil, and as always, with me is my trusty co-host, the best and fastest researcher in the West, Camille. How are you doing today, Camille?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? We've got the convention this weekend. Sorry, I just have to mention that.
That's right. Yeah, we got big news because the convention's coming up in a couple days. We will be there. We're going to be doing 3 hours of live streaming. We got a table, so definitely make sure you stop on by. For those of you who don't know, the GOP convention switches every spring and fall, I think it is, and then it was down here in OC, and then now it's up there in San Francisco. Yes, I guess there are conservatives up there in the Bay Area who come out to see it. So yeah, we'll be there. We'll be walking around in the morning, checking out stuff, and then 1 to 4 is our time. I mean, if we say 1 to 4 will be around that time, we're going to try and stick to the time as close as possible. Doesn't mean we'll be there exactly at 1 or whatever, but just definitely swing by in the afternoon at the exhibitors table and say hi and check us out. And for any of those who can't make it, we will be live streaming basically everywhere. We'll be live streaming YouTube, Rumble. This time we'll be on Instagram Live. So yeah, basically as many places as we possibly can live stream. All right. So today's episode that we want to discuss is all about where the heck did $24 billion go? If you remember way back when we had Josh Hoover on, and he's an assemblyman up in Sacramento, and he talked about this audit that was happening, that he was able to get started. He was on the committee, and he was talking about how the results were going to come out probably a long time down the road. Well, the results have come out, and the reports have come out, and I'm sure you're not shocked to find out that it's not good. We don't know where most of the money went. $24 billion was spent. There's not a lot of data as to where it went. We don't know if it's successful or not. So yeah, I think a lot of people would not be surprised by the fact that California lost $24 billion on homelessness. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this audit show that this much amount of money was lost, Camille?
Do you think they checked their coat pockets?
They could have checked have you checked under the couch cushions? Maybe that's where some of the money does fall out into your couch cushions.
Get a metal detector. No, so this is obviously disgusting, disturbing, and yet not surprising, sadly. We know that they're quite reckless up there with what they do, and they often just make decisions, and they just think that money, it appears out of nowhere, and then they do things, and then they can't account for it. And it worries me that this might just blow over. Like in 6 months, no one's going to talk about this again. It's just going to be like swept under the rug with all the $24 billion missing under there. And they're just going to sweep this whole issue under the rug and never mention it again and move on with life. Some other crisis will happen. But this is serious. $24 billion is a huge amount of money, especially in a state that already has an almost $100 billion deficit. And they're trying to cut budgets in all these places. And I'll stop there. Those are my initial thoughts.
Do you think, and this thought just popped into my head, do you think that those who were in charge of all this never expected there would be an audit?
Yes, I do believe they didn't think that would happen. I think the California government has gotten so big and so inflated that to try to even be accountable, who are you even being accountable to at this point? There's every time that we come up with some new idea, there's a new agency of 4 or 5, 10 people, whatever, and who are they accountable to? And I mean, it's no surprise I don't like Newsom's policies, so I don't want to put all this on Newsom, but there's an entire government, hundreds of thousands of employees all across the state. And then it's just like some of this money is going to counties and some of it's going to cities and some of it's, coming straight from Sacramento to nonprofits. And I just feel like there's so much going out that it's too much. It's too much. There's too many agencies, there's too many boards, there's too many groups, there's too many nonprofits, and then nobody is on top of it. And then if there was somebody that was on top of it, it would just be like another $500K salary for this group, for this group, for this, and there would be like millions more gone. I don't know
we
if
were
I
we were discussing is something you're looking into. Remind me again, how many agencies or groups are in the executive branch right now still related to COVID in California? Aren't we discussing this the other day?
I'm not sure still now, but we were looking at Transparent California, which a few weeks ago we did an episode with Todd Madison on that. So please check out that episode. I forget what number it is, 252. It's recent. He tracks the government salaries. And I typed in just the word COVID just to see. And I believe it was 391 as people as of 2022 that they were still, this title with COVID administrative, this title COVID, whatever. And I could pull up the numbers now, if I won't. But I forget how much the salary total was just for 2022 for those 391 employees that were brought on, or additional salaries, whatever, just for COVID.
I'm just looking it up right now. Wow. Okay, and you said 2022?
Yeah, that just because those are the most recent numbers that we have.
Yeah, it's over 300 people, 363. So, wouldn't a lot of this also fall under like the public health department? Why do we need 400 new people just to focus on COVID in 2022? By the way,
that's a whole other episode.
That's a whole nother episode that we might go like down the rabbit hole in terms of all these different things.
We go down the most wild rabbit holes. I wish every day we were like, not really, but the text that we go back and forth with our like, look what I found. Like we have every day an episode.
There's a lot. So what kind of ends up in the episode is usually what's most pertinent, but there's so much stuff we do talk about. I don't think they ever actually thought that there was going to be an audit. And we're going to watch a video in a little bit of the oversight committee that did this audit or asked for this audit. And it's going to show very succinctly the fact that I don't think anybody ever expected that they were going to be audited. I don't think anybody in this homeless industry, we all know homelessness in California, unfortunately and sadly, is a booming business. Like there is good money to be made if you are the CEO of a nonprofit. We've looked at articles that show people who make $500,000, $400,000 being the CEO of these nonprofits, and most of these they're getting grants from the government. They're getting money from the government. So there's a lot of money in homelessness, and a lot of people are making a ton of money off homelessness. And I just don't think they ever thought, in a state that's one party rule, where the governor's on your side, mostly everybody's on your side, you agree with the governor, you agree with the party, that there would ever be someone coming one day going, hey, so where did you spend all that money that we sent you? Like just checking in, seeing what's going on with all that, those billions of dollars we gave you. So yeah, this audit came out, and suffice it to say, they don't have a lot of answers. Cal Matters did an article, and it's the first article we'll discuss. It says, exactly how much is California spending to combat homelessness, and is it working? It turns out no one knows. That's the result of a much anticipated statewide audit released Tuesday, which calls into question the state's ability to track and analyze its spending on homelessness services. The state doesn't have current information on the ongoing costs and results of its homelessness programs because the agency tasked with gathering that data, the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, has analyzed no spending past 2021.
Because that's right. There is an agency.
There's a whole agency.
A whole agency. Oh, we won't. But we could look up their salaries. They haven't. Their job is to do this, and they haven't done it for 3 years.
Yeah. 3 years is a long time. I mean,
Long
shouldn't
time.
your job every year you should be coming out? This is your only
Well,
job is to look into this.
especially since the state just passed Prop 1, which is a whole
Hmm.
new, billions of dollars for additional homeless spending. And it's just like, we should have known what was going on last year and the year before. Like, we needed the most recent data before we start passing new, like, again, this is just what they do. They're like, oh, okay, you need more money for this. Oh, you like, they just, let's throw more money and more money we don't have. Let's just
Yeah.
throw more money at it, even though we have no idea where the last 24 billion went. Here's another 6 billion. All the while, homelessness in California is growing every year. This is not
Hmm.
moving the needle. This is not like, oh, well, we're fixing it and we've come down a long way and look at these results. And okay, so our tax dollars are actually hard at work here and we're doing something. That's
Right.
the problem.
Okay, so tinfoil hat time.
Oh boy, we've been doing that a lot lately.
Yeah, this is the second episode in a row where I put my little tinfoil hat on. Tinfoil hat time. So it takes a while for these audits to get going. Like when we had
Yes.
Josh Hoover on and he said, hey, we're going to do this audit. It's going to take a while. It's going to take, I think you looked it up, like 5,000 man hours to do this. They wanted to pass Prop 1, and they got Prop 1 on the earlier primary ballot, which we had known, like, hey, it's because there's lower turnout. Most people don't really show up for the primaries. Do you think that there was also an urgency to get it on the primary ballot, knowing this audit was going to come out? And they all knew, oh crap, we haven't looked at any spending in 3 years. We have no answers. So imagine if Prop 1 was still on the ballot right now for November and this audit came out, what would you think the percentage of yes and no would be when it comes up for a vote in November, if that was the scenario?
I don't know how much that would change because I do feel like most voters don't pay attention. And I'm not like attacking anyone or shaming anyone by saying that. I just think most don't. They don't pay attention. They just get out and vote RD. But I think there's enough people that do pay attention that possibly it could have swayed it by a bit. I mean, because we know this one was so close, wasn't it? Like 40.
Mm-hmm.
It was so close that it was like
51-49. It was
yeah.
very, very close.
So it actually could have swayed it the opposite way if people started raising questions and been like, well, hold up. We already know that this, just came out in January that you guys lost all this money and there's not like the audit has discovered that you have no idea where it went. So how can I trust that this new $6 billion, wasn't it the $6 billion prop, is going to do anything? Like, I'm sure enough people would start raising questions and hopefully would have gotten out to vote. I don't know for sure, but I could see with numbers that close, it could have been swayed.
I think it would have been 60-40 no. I think this big old matzo ball hanging out there would have just been run continually of like, it was this close when the opposition spent $1,000. Like there was no opposition.
You're right. Like,
so if they had a whole election season all the way up until November and then this came out on top of it, they would just be running ads over and over again. Like the state lost $24 billion and has no idea where it went. And now they want you to give them more money. I mean, they would just run that ad continually. And I think it probably would have killed Prop 1 a lot more soundly. But instead, here we are. Prop 1 passed. We gave them $6 billion on top of $24 billion where we have no idea where it went. So
it's a random off-topic question that just yes or no answer. You don't have to give a long answer. But we discussed before that this new recall Newsom is probably a waste of time and resources. Have you changed your mind on that?
I mean, the stuff is definitely mounting in favor of like he has not. His presidential ambitions, I think, are pretty much dead, if not on serious life support at this point. This might be the final nail in the coffin. That $24 billion was effectively just spent and we have no idea where it went. And not to go back a year because he was pushing for this amount of money. Like he's been pushing for them to spend around $20 billion to address homelessness. So he's been at the root cause of all of this. Like it's not like he didn't know, like, oh, the legislature got away from me and I don't know what happened. Like he was pushing this.
Yeah. This big thing is, since he was mayor of San Francisco, was I'm going to solve homelessness. I'm going to solve it. Like, and here, when was that? 2004? I forget. Sorry. 10 years later, it's like, what has he done?
Yeah. I think I would say, okay, so we got the state has a $73 billion deficit. His new budget still comes up short by $27 billion. You have this $24 billion that has gone missing. I would say it's close. Like, I feel like something else has to come out that is just so shocking and damning that, like, it deserves, like, okay, this is repugnant. Like, you have to get recalled. Like, you have no idea what you're doing. It's close, though. Do I think he deserves it? Sure. I mean, I think he's proved he hasn't done a great job. So,
we're 2 months past the State of the Union address.
Yeah, he still won't give the state of the state, still won't answer when he's going to do that. Probably because he's trying to figure out how the heck do I spin all this horrible stuff. So yeah.
Sorry.
Back to the article. So they said they haven't analyzed any spending past 2021. According to the report by the state auditor Grant Parks, 3 of the 5 state programs the audit analyzed, including the state's main homelessness funding source, didn't even produce enough data for Parks to determine whether they were effective or not. The audit also analyzed homelessness services in San Jose and San Diego, finding both cities failed to thoroughly account for their spending or measure the success of many of their programs. Quote, "The lack of transparency in our current approach to homelessness is pretty frightening," said Assemblymember Josh Hoover, a Republican from Folsom, who co-authored the request for the audit. Quote, "The state auditor's findings highlight the significant progress made in recent years to address homelessness at the state level, including the completion of a statewide assessment of homeless programs," the Interagency Council on Homelessness wrote in an emailed statement. But it also underscores the need to continue to hold local governments accountable, who are primarily responsible for implementing these programs and collecting data on outcomes that the state can use to evaluate program effectiveness. Let's see, going on. Is there anything else? And there's a whole bunch of this other. This has become the common refrain that you hear from like Newsom all the way down to everybody else who's working on this, is that this is all the local government's fault. It's not Newsom's fault. It's not the state level's fault. It's the local government's fault of like why we don't know where the money's going.
I wonder where they want to push that narrative.
Yeah, well, they want to wipe their hands clean and say, well, we gave them, $24 billion and they haven't told us where the money went.
Right. But if they keep pushing that and they get in people's heads that local government's doing a bad job and Sacramento should be the ones in control, then slowly but surely local government people are going to be like, oh, well, they misuse funds. We need Sacramento to come in and help us, and let's do away with local government.
Mm-hmm. There's something else I wanted to... Anyway, I can't find it now. We got a lot of stuff to get to, but there's this video. Ashley Zavala did a good breakdown of this, so we're going to take a watch of this video, and then there's another video with Bill Saley after that, which was from a year ago. So a year ago, we'll watch it. So.
Frustration over homelessness spending. Tensions flared today at the state capitol.
Yeah, a group of state lawmakers put Governor Gavin Newsom's administration under the microscope for its handling of the state's homelessness crisis. KCRA 3 Capitol correspondent Ashley Zavala joining us now with more from that hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the public's patience has worn thin, but also lawmakers made it very public that their patience is also wearing down with the administration. Now, the homelessness and housing arm of Governor Newsom's administration was in the hot seat this afternoon in the Assembly. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle expressed not just frustration, but exhaustion with the lack of information from the administration on the results of its homelessness spending. The Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Oversight and Accountability held this hearing on the state's homelessness efforts. The bulk of the hearing centered around the state's homelessness, housing, and assistance program grant funding, also known as HAP grants, which is the money the state sends to cities and counties to help with their homelessness response. Now, this hearing comes less than a month after a state audit found Newsom's administration over the last 5 years spent more than $20 billion on homelessness, but did not track the effectiveness of that money. Now, the number of unhoused people statewide has increased 53% since 2013. Now, in today's hearing, Newsom's administration officials could not provide key data to show the HAP grant program is working. San Francisco Assemblyman Phil Ting absolutely grilled them.
Do we have anything from 2022?
Again, apologies.
Why is it taking so long? I mean, you're the one that said you're urgent. I don't know, maybe my sense of urgency is different from your sense of urgency.
We're working expeditiously.
What does that mean, though?
We're very short order. We'll have
What does short order mean?
We're working in the next several weeks to have a HAP annual report produced.
So why? I mean, you're coming to hearing today, and you can't tell us how many. We spent billions of dollars, and you can't tell us at all how many people we've helped.
Apologies, I don't have the information in front of me to share.
You have it in your office?
Again, we're working through data quality issues in order to finalize the report.
Now,
So that right there, when I watched that, that's where I realized, I don't think they ever expected an audit. I don't think they ever expected the legislature to actually ask where the heck all the money went, because they showed up to a hearing that they knew they had to report on. It was an oversight hearing about where did you spend all the money, and they literally just showed up empty-handed and go, "Yep, we have no idea. So cool. Hope you guys have a good day." But Phil Ting, for those who don't know, he's an assembly member, Democrat, obviously, from San Francisco. So from San Francisco, he was that harsh on Gavin Newsom's own interagency council, whatever the heck they call it, ICH members. So what do you think of that girl's response?
If I had the authority, if I were there and had the authority, fired on the spot. That entire agency should be fired on the spot. You've owned a small business before, and your family has had small businesses that you've worked at. If you had an employee who was entrusted with I think you guys had a cafe, yes? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I have a point. And so if you had someone who, worked in the industry or something, and you're like, okay, well, this is our budget for our kitchen, please, get us the proper appliances. And then they showed up and the money was gone, and they were like, I don't know where it is. I don't know where the equipment is. It may be in a few weeks you'll have it. That person you would be looking into them. You would be you'd be like, oh my God, did you just run with my money? You would fire them. You would not trust them. You would be like, okay, you just screwed us over, and they would be gone. And the fact that we put up with this, the government, the state, that whatever, we put up with this. Again, these are people who are tax dollars are paying their salaries, and they show up and go, I don't know. Better luck next year. Better luck. Then I don't like the attitude. I don't like the lack of work. I don't like the lack of integrity, and I don't like that we're paying for this. Sorry, I'm all upset now.
Funny side story. We actually did have an issue like that, where we had some guy who had to come in and install a industrial hood for all of our kitchen equipment. That's part of the health code. We paid him all this money to install this hood, and then he disappeared. And he kept giving my dad all these texts and runarounds about why haven't you done the hood yet? You said it'd be done in a month. And it took him 5 months to get it done, until finally my dad got a hold of him and read him the riot act. And then he showed up with a whole bunch of guys and got it done.
I did not know that story prior to this episode. I swear I didn't. I wasn't trying to be like, hey.
But I mean, I'm thinking the frustration that my father had. I mean, we all had it, because we're like, where the heck is this guy? We gave him all this money. He was supposed to get this done. Imagine that on a scale times 100,000,
billions of dollars.
Millions. And this girl just shows up to a hearing that she knows I should have something. I should at least have done, at least to show good faith of we got some data. We know where some of it's going. The fact that you show up and you're just like, I don't know. I don't have that data in front of me.
To show up and be like, okay, I'm sorry that I don't have the full report here in front of me today, but by this date, I'm supposed to have the majority of the data. And do you want to know what I have so far? Here's what I can report on this agency or this group or whatever. Here's the numbers. There's just nothing. I don't have it. I'm here. And it's so frustrating because I keep saying taxpayer dollars. Like, this isn't their money. This isn't like they earned money and now this is their personal problem. This is our money. This is our money.
Yeah.
This is our
She
money,
just
you
doesn't
guys.
really seem to care. And to your point about, if this was in the private sector, if your boss said, okay, in a couple weeks, I need you to come in and report to me about what's going on in your department, X, Y, and Z. Imagine if you just showed up to that meeting and looked at your boss in the eye and was like, I got nothing. And the boss is like, I asked you to get this done 2 weeks ago and you're telling me you have nothing? Do you have it in your office? No.
3 years of data. It's not like, I don't have the last 3 months because we're waiting on this or this. It's like, I have no idea what happened in 2022 and 2023 and the first quarter of this year. Don't know. No clue.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing all day? This is your job.
Yeah.
Okay,
You are literally that's your only, the ICH, the Interagency Council on Homelessness. Like, you are supposed to be the council that knows everything about homelessness.
You can make the meme. Like, you had one job, Karen.
You had one job, Karen, and you screwed the pooch on this one. That clip right there should just be going viral and just be upsetting all Californians, of that girl just going, I have no idea. I don't know. It's not in my desk. I don't know where it is. Like, that should infuriate so many Californians.
Is it like an Enron situation? They were like deleting all the emails and shredding the files. Remember that? Do you remember Enron?
Yes. Yeah. That's a throwback way back in the day. They were trying to get rid of all the evidence. Who was involved in Enron? That someone in the Bush administration. But anyway, that's not the point of today's show, is to talk about the Bush administration and Enron. Today is to talk about how California is pissing away billions of dollars of your tax dollars. So, all right, let's finish the video.
The Newsom administration also faced criticism for slowly rolling out this grant money that's already been earmarked, and with this process taking about a year before the cities and counties can actually see this money. But the administration says it's trying to make sure cities and counties are doing what they're makes no ones are at this point.
Right.
So
you don't know what you don't know. And you got to feel for that woman trying to answer those questions, but it's also flabbergasting.
I don't feel for that woman at all. I don't feel for that woman at all. I don't. She had a job. She knows what she's supposed to do. She's a grown adult. She got called in front of the legislature to answer questions. She was not prepared. I don't feel for her at all.
Do we have her name?
I don't know. We didn't catch her name. She has brown hair. She's probably on the
call for her to be fired.
Yeah, seriously.
Or
I'm sure
just
she's on the website if you go look at but yeah. We're gonna look at one of the staff members later of the ICH.
Right.
They would come to that meeting with nothing.
Yeah, and we're talking about years worth of data. Like this program has been in place since basically 2019, and they're just trying to understand even the first subset of whether or not this has worked.
Right. There should be a book this big on data at this point. Okay, what are the next steps?
Yeah, so this was just an oversight hearing.
Yeah.
Remember when jobs used to have like a 3-month trial period of like prove yourself, and then we'll evaluate
like a probationary period. Yeah.
Like, that's just not a thing. Like she, I mean, I actually haven't watched this video before, but she said what I kind of brought up of like, no data the last few years. They've had this in place since 2019. What did they? I'm sorry. What were they doing all day long?
It doesn't say who actually testified. Because now I'm curious, and now I want to look up how much we're paying her to not do her job. Hold on, let's see.
So this is because now I would have grace if this was a new agency that they were like, okay, we've got to get some accountability here, so let's get this new agency together and start getting some numbers. And they're like, we're still figuring this all out. We haven't come up with a complete answer. This is 5 years old. This is an agency that's been in existence since 2019. they should be able to have some streamlined, protocols in place to really, like, it shouldn't be I have no idea where that data is. They should be having, like, here's this month, here's this quarters, here's this year. Like, no. I'm gonna go in and be like, look, put me in place here, pay me $500K a year, I'll eliminate all these employees and I'll have answers for you next month. I'm not even kidding. Like, this is not, yes, it's probably a lot of work, but it's just work. If you're working, you can figure this stuff out. If you're not working, no, you're not gonna have answers.
I'm trying to see.
Government, if you're listening, I'm not even kidding. I will come and I will fix this for you, but you'll pay me for it.
I'm trying to
see. Sorry, go. What do you have?
I'm trying. It's hard to tell because you're looking at like back of their head to see like if you can figure out who it is.
Oh.
But I mean, most of the let's see. I'm trying to, and I don't think there's even any data on any of these people yet of how much they're actually making. Like, I looked up Megan Marshall, who is the executive officer of this group. And again, as Todd Madison said, 2023 hasn't come out yet, so Transparent California hasn't updated yet. Her last job was
how bad this agency is, and maybe they're constantly firing and rehiring, and so no one sticks around long enough for them to.
Maybe her last job in 2022 was deputy director of Health and Human Services, and she made $131,000. That's the executive director. I'm sure she got a raise since then. So
who was the spokesperson? I'm not sure.
But anyway. Finishing up the video. I think there's a couple seconds left.
Hearing. No action was taken, no vote on anything, but lawmakers are going to take the information it got or didn't get from this hearing and use it as the budget negotiations ramp up this month with Governor Gavin Newsom. He is expected to present his updated state spending plan at some point within the next couple of weeks. We know homelessness and housing money is a sticking point, especially this year as the state faces a significant budget deficit, which we have been reporting a lot on.
And how do you ask for more money or the same money when you can't say what happened to the old money?
And that's what lawmakers, I think, are struggling with right now. They want to see data. They want to see, they want the administration to make the case that they should continue spending this money, but how do you do social time? So that's the biggest question probably going into those negotiations.
All right, great reporting. Thanks.
Well, I mean, you can ask for more money by sneaking it on the ballot in a primary where people won't know it's even happening. That's one way you could do it, as opposed to letting people know that this prop is actually happening. So, that's one way you can do it. Deceptive propositions. So, but I think I don't know. Like, we're already spending $6 billion through Prop 1 on more homeless spending. I don't know how you stop the government from spending more on homelessness at this point. You sent me an article, which we're going to go over in a little bit, about how Newsom actually wants to start cutting more of the homeless spending or cut back on the homeless spending. It's a mess. Oh, you're muted.
So I just talked with my hands. No, I said
you were just talking with my hands. Yeah,
because it's we just had in March on the ballot more spending, and now today or yesterday, whatever, he's coming out with less spending. It was just, anyway. Yeah, we'll get to that.
So this is the video. This is from 1 year ago, Bill Saley, and this was an informational hearing. So I want to watch this one as well. So this is the arrogance of a lot of these people who, again, this was a year ago, and I don't really think they expected the hammer to fall on them. And this is the arrogance of people who work in this area of the government.
You could see since 2014, the homeless rate has increased. Going from around 100,000, now we're up to 170,000, mostly in the unsheltered population. So would we agree that what we've been doing so far is not working? Mr. Olmsted?
I mean, I wouldn't agree because, as was mentioned, we've only had a couple of years of investment, so we're not seeing the payoff. The units I said that our department's funding, for example, are in construction right now. Development takes a couple of years, even if we deploy those funds very quickly. So I can speak for our department. We haven't been given the chance to see the impact yet.
4 or 5 years, not enough. So what are we doing now to get these people off the streets? Mr. Olmsted, you work for the governor, correct?
I'm appointed by the governor.
You're appointed by the governor. Is the governor thought about declaring an emergency or setting up emergency shelters? What are we doing to get people off the street?
Unfortunately, while I'm appointed by him, I'm not on a speaking term basis with him. Not that high up in his office.
But
I
you
can't
agree
speak for him.
it's a crisis. I mean, you've been around LA, Los Angeles?
My department is an implementer of funds. We're not in the business of doing emergency declarations in that way. We implement the funds the legislature and the governor agreed to fund, and we deliver on those promises.
Come on. You cannot, you're just focused on money. You're not concerned about policy.
No, we implement laws too, including all the housing laws that have been passed the last couple of years.
What baffles me is this.
Yeah.
Should we bring President Xi Jinping back and have him do a state tour? Maybe that'll get some emergency cleanup in place.
Yeah, and we should just have him do a statewide tour. Like, he'll start in San Francisco, he'll go to LA, San Diego, maybe swing by Anaheim just for,
Santa Ana.
Santa Ana, yeah. Just have him swing by all the cities. Sacramento. I know he's powerful. I don't know if he can help Stockton, but sure, swing by there as well. Fresno. So yeah. That seems to be the only thing in the past couple of years we know for certain definitely solves homelessness.
Literally was the best solution we have had in a decade.
Yeah, that was clearly the best. Just bring a Chinese dictator over, and
it was like a 2-day thing. I'm sorry, I have a cat meowing. Like they literally got it done.
Cat's upset about homelessness.
Yes, it's probably a cat outside. To be honest, it's probably not my cat. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like an academic conversation. Meanwhile, there are people suffering outside. And we're just talking academically about in the future, 5-10 years from now, we might have a handle on this. And I see no evidence to support that. I think the focus should be shelter first, housing earned. We have to get people off the streets. I do not think it's acceptable in a civilized society to allow the number of people that we have living on the streets it baffles my mind. So I want to go back to something you said. When you were asked about the measure of success, you said you measure the number of units built or made available. Is that correct?
That's one measure that's often talked about, yes.
Is that your primary measure?
I think it's the measure that most, not just our department, but most of the industry and the world uses. I don't think it's the most important measure around return on investment and impact. It's how many people are we housing within those units and for how long and how much of return on investment we're getting.
Well, the government's not into the house building business. We're not home builders, right? I think the focus should be on how many people we get off the street, correct?
I just want to point out, if you're just listening on audio and you're not watching the video of this, this witness, again, the arrogance of these bureaucratic imbeciles should make your skin crawl, because he's looking around. Now, Bill Saley's asking really poignant, good questions. Like, what's your objective? You shouldn't be in the housing market. Like, we should be focused on getting homeless people off the street. And this guy, if you're watching the video, is looking around. He's not paying attention. He's looking at the other Democrats on the thing. He's looking around like, do I really have to sit here and answer any of this stuff? Like, are you kidding me? Like, he has this kind of arrogance to him of like, I don't need to answer your dumb Republican questions. Like, and like, I don't, he's kind of flippant about answers. He just doesn't really seem to care. He can't provide answers. And this was a year ago. So I don't think everybody in this sector believed the hammer was going to drop on him. But I think the hammer has dropped even when you have Democrats from San Francisco who are out there absolutely grilling people in these agencies. I didn't know if you had any comment on that, or if you're trying to shoo away stray cats over there.
No, I agree with you. I have no comment, but it is. I don't want to get all off topic on this, but I don't understand what it is, because I think you and I came from a generation of like customer service was important, and I know this isn't customer service, but that's how it feels. Where it's like we were raised with like your customer service, the customer's always right, and I get that they're trying to get answers here, but I feel like this is how kids today act, if you will. I don't know how old this guy is, but it's just like they have this privileged attitude of like, I don't have to answer your questions. I don't have to be accountable for anything. I don't like, is this guy for real? Just like, looking around the room, looking at his friends, coworkers, or whatever, being like, can you believe he's asking me this? Like, who does he think he is? And I don't understand that attitude and that arrogance. That's what's so baffling to me about half of this. And I think that's half the problem, is that they have this attitude and they're not even able to provide the answers, because they just think, well, why do I need to even have these answers? I'm just over here, with my head down and doing what I want when I want, and texting people, and I'm making TikTok videos, and I'll let you know if I care to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
To bring the homeless number down, don't you think that number is more important than the number of units that are built or created?
We're implementing the programs as they're structured in the statutes given to us, which are production programs. We're assisting developers to create those programs. So we're implementing the programs that have been created by this legislature with fund.
We're imposing the laws and policies that were given to us.
But even his attitude, the way he's talking to Mr. Asaley, like, I feel like Bill Asaley here is being very respectful in his questions and being very direct, and then this guy's just like acting so condescending in his answers. And and I know it's not about the attitude. I mean, the attitude has a lot to do with that, but like, see, this is what we're faced against. These people are with their inflated salaries and their jobs that clearly do nothing, and they just act like this, and that's where I get so frustrated. Like,
yeah,
we want results.
Yeah, and I mean, you could make the causal argument that the reason that a lot of these agencies and a lot of these programs focus on housing rather than getting homeless people off the street is because construction unions make a lot more money off of building housing than getting homeless people off the street, and construction unions love to donate to California Democrats. So that's why I think their marker is how many housing units, and we're going to talk about how bad it is and how much money they charge for that in just a second. But this one, I'm glad I found this video, because this guy he's just so arrogant and should make people's skin crawl about how bad this is. There's about 20 seconds left. Let's just finish up.
With funding appropriated by this legislature, and we are pretty proud of the work that we're doing.
You're proud of the work that you're doing. Okay. It's an embarrassment, I think, but with that, I don't have any more questions.
The fact that he shrugged his shoulders, he was like, that's what we're doing. Okay. So
right, like, cool that you're proud of the work you're doing, but you didn't have an answer for us today, and that's like that's the point of today.
Yeah,
it's not about your little, what do they call it? The awards for participation trophy. Like, that's not what we're here to discuss. But cool.
Real quick, there was this article you sent me from PPIC, Public Policy Institute of California, which shows the point in time count released in December, this was 2023, estimated that more than 180,000 people were experiencing homelessness in our state, up 6% from the previous count. So it is increased again.
And I don't want to get so far off topic with this either, but you live in San Diego, where we're seeing daily thousands migrants crossing the border every single day. I know some of them are getting on buses and planes and going elsewhere, but do you think that this border crisis is contributing a lot to our homelessness crisis in California?
Yeah, I can't see why not. I know that down here in San Diego, we had Jim Desmond on. He talked about how we have a literal welcome center for migrants who come across the border. So I think there's some guidance. I'm not saying every single one of them ends up getting on a plane or a bus somewhere. But it could contribute. Yeah, it could definitely have an effect of they got here and they're like, now what do I do? And I don't speak the language and I don't have ID or money or anything like that. So where do I go now? So I think it definitely could contribute to it. I know when Trump was in office, and the Remain in Mexico policy was still in effect, if you drove across the border in San Ysidro, you could immediately drive across the border As soon as you're in Mexico, you can look over to your left, and right there was like a huge tent city of migrants who were just camped out. So it contributed to the homeless issue in Tijuana, and they didn't like that. So yeah, I definitely think it does have a little bit of an impact. I don't know how big it does, um, but according to some people, those migrants are what has spurred our tourism numbers. I don't know how that works out, but sure. If you want to try and make that argument, I'd love to hear your rationale about how migrants helped our tourism numbers. So if you want to know how much we're spending on these housing, because that guy was very proud of the fact that he's building
Proud of
units
the work
in
they've
LA.
done.
What's that?
I said he's proud of the work they've done.
He's
So
very proud of the work he's done, especially down in there in the LA area, which he's part of implementing the legislature or the laws that the legislature put in process. Santa Monica city officials last week approved a multi-million-dollar apartment unit for the homeless just days after the release of an audit which found California could not account for the $24 billion it spent on the state's burgeoning homeless crisis. The 122-unit building for the homeless will include a mix of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, along with ground floor retail and residential and commercial parking spaces. Oh, that's nice. So they have retail and commercial spaces down below. A design concept available on the city's website shows that the multi-apartment unit will cost more than $123 million for the cost of over just $1 million each for the 122 apartments. The second design concept would cost even more, north of $200 million for 196 units. The California Interagency Council on Homelessness, there they are again, the agency responsible for coordinating agencies and allocating resources for the homelessness programs, blamed local governments for the problem, saying that these municipalities must be held more accountable. So, must be nice having an apartment that was built for $1 million given to you. Meanwhile, working class or middle class Californians are completely priced out of the housing market and can't buy anything. So that's nice.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that guy's very proud of what he's doing that we saw in the last video.
yes, he's proud of his work.
Any comment on the Santa Monica spending $1 million per unit for the homeless?
Don't get me started. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, obviously it's ridiculous, like all this. I think we have a spending problem, not a homelessness problem. I mean, we have a homelessness problem, but I feel like if we could get a handle on some of the spending, we would actually have less of a homeless problem.
Mm-hmm. And Santa Monica is a nice place, so
Is it still? I don't know.
The last time I went, it was a long time ago. It was nicer, one of the nicer areas of Los Angeles. Let's see. Yeah, and to get $1 million apartment in Santa Monica, close to the beach, just hand it over. Must be pretty nice. There's another thing I want to talk about real quick. Do you remember during COVID what they did with all the homeless?
What did they do?
They did this Project Room Key where they took over old hotels and put them up in these old hotels.
Yeah, wasn't that just isolated to a few areas?
Yes, it was isolated to a few areas. It says, this is from CalMatters as well. Did California's massive COVID homeless shelter program work? A new evaluation probes the results. California's massive effort to shelter homeless residents during the COVID-19 pandemic was a success, according to a new report that says the effort changed the state's homeless services system for the better. But at the same time, the researchers pointed out a troubling dearth of available data on the program. With the little information they were able to access, they found that people who left the program had at least a 40% chance of returning to homelessness. Project Room Key, one of Governor Gavin Newsom's signature pandemic initiatives, temporarily moved about 62,000 homeless Californians into hotel rooms in an effort to prevent them from catching COVID. The model, which provided residents with their own private room and bathroom, as well as in some cases healthcare and other services, was a world apart from traditional shelters where dozens of people sleep together. Researchers acknowledged large holes in the accessible state and local data. For example, they couldn't cross-reference death records or information about participants' health, meaning that they had no way to prove room key prevented deaths or kept people healthier. Initial responses to public records requests filed by CalMatters revealed dozens of deaths in room key programs spread across the state. In Ventura County, 32 people died in room key hotels, the majority due to health conditions and COVID-related. Let's see. It said Jennifer Harkey, program director of the Ventura County Continuum of Care. 12 people died in San Diego County, 8 in Tulare County, and 7 elderly people in Riverside County. This is the last thing I want to bring up. So the result is, as of January, 22% of people leaving room key programs throughout the state went to permanent housing. 11% went to temporary housing. So after they ended room key, what happened to them? According to state data compiled by the researchers, another 40% remained homeless, 25% went into the emergency shelters, and 15% went back to the street. Another 18% went to unknown destinations, meaning they didn't tell staff where they were going or staff didn't track it. So overall, 22% went to permanent housing. The plurality, I would say, went back to the streets and were homeless. While some researchers say it was a success, I don't know if it was a complete success. Now, keep in mind, Project Room Key was not supposed to be like permanent housing. It wasn't like a solution to be like, oh, we're going to just buy these hotels and put them up in hotels forever. It was their response to COVID because they didn't want a bunch of homeless in shelters all congregating together. But I mean, if you're going to spend all this money and you had tracking of all these people who were in these hotels and your success rate was 22% got to permanent housing, but the plurality went back to being homeless or back on the streets, when you had them sort of like in these hotel rooms where you could get them help and treatment and services like that, I don't know if I would call that necessarily a success. What do you think?
Well, two things. Okay. One, what exactly is permanent housing here? Is that some sort of $1 million condo that the government built for them, or they moved in with family? Like, I don't know that you have the answer, but I do question, what does that even mean? But again, here we have, I am not opposed to this program. I'm not opposed to them like putting, people for safety purposes in hotels, in rooms, shelters. I'm not opposed to any of that. But again, it's just like they put him in there and then they walked away and lost track of everything that happened to him after the fact. Like they maybe followed up on a few, as numbers show here or whatever, but for the most part, they just threw money at a situation, put some people there, and then walked away. And then here we are again with this, like, well, what happened? Did it work? They were housed for a few months, but in the long run, what did that do? It's just, that's where I'm just so baffled and upset over all of this, is that they completely lost track. If you're going to spend taxpayer dollars, you need to
like
track.
I said, I think it's the fact that they had this opportunity and it's not very often you have this opportunity where you can sort of get this one-on-one tracking of like, okay, who came into Project Room Key? Okay, we have your name. We know where you are. You're supposed to stay here for COVID reasons. And you could really get that kind of one-on-one help to these people. And to say 22% only went to permanent housing, 11% went to temporary housing, but basically the rest of everybody else went back to the streets, or they don't know where they went. It just shows like, okay, so you didn't take the opportunity. Not only that, you were getting flooded with federal COVID money, and you didn't take that opportunity to do something about it while you could track a lot of homeless and kind of make an impact. I'm not saying this is, sorry. I was just going to say it's not part of this whole 24 billion. Maybe it is, but I'm saying you had an opportunity to kind of address this and you didn't.
Yeah. And I know like you and I would be like anti-government tracking, but if you're going to take dollars from taxpayers, if tax, like, there's tax funds that are going to be used to help people, then if I'm going to check myself into some sort of government assistance program, I should be held accountable to a certain standard. They should be held accountable to is this working? We can't just I keep going back to that, I know, but I want to hound in that point that it's like, yes, there are people that need help, and I'm not opposed to them being helped. I'm not opposed to tax funds helping, but if we're not helping and we're not even tracking if we're helping or not, and we don't know if we're helping, and we don't know what's happening to the money, we're just continue to throw more money at it because we have no idea what's going on. That's where this is a problem. And so,
and in more news that came out this week, ill timing for California. This is from the Los Angeles Times. San Francisco shelter operator got $105,000 for work it never did, city officials say.
this is my shocked face. Just
surprise.
so surprised.
Is this all you had to do is drive by this shelter for homeless people, and it's clear that San Francisco had been duped, officials say. There was no new paint job brightening the Oasis Hotel, which houses some of the city's most vulnerable residents. That was just some of the work for which the city was brazenly charged, but was never actually completed, the city attorney says. A nonprofit that operates shelters and other housing programs across San Francisco has been suspended from bidding on new contracts and grants after an investigation revealed it falsified invoices to receive more than $100,000, according to San Francisco City Attorney's Office. So again, there's another thing I want. Providence Foundation ignored the clear anti-nepotism provision in the grant agreement by hiring members of at least 7 different families, including 2 of the executive director's children and a child of the vice president of the board of directors. The Providence Foundation of San Francisco currently has multiple city grants, mostly through the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. It also receives city funding for operating a navigation center, an interim housing site, multiple housing subsidy and voucher programs, and supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. So, we had already said in this episode, it's big business to be in the homeless business, and people know that. And this is just one instance. I would not be surprised if you keep digging how much of this happens across the state in terms of fraud and people ripping off the government and taking money, or the worst case scenario is that they know, like, they're setting up these nonprofits and it's clear issues of nepotism and it's favoritism and it's political connections and everybody's like getting what they want. And at the end of the day, they're just getting duped for a ton of money. So
I applaud them on this particular incident of they actually investigated and figured out like they were being conned. However, are there any repercussions for that? Does this guy get punished? Does he have to pay back the money? I'm sure he doesn't. I'm sure they're like, okay, don't do that again. I mean, I think they said this particular nonprofit can't bid on government contracts for a set amount of time, but still the money's gone now. It's just it's gone, and like it's not going to get paid back. And that's where it's like, if we started doing all these investigations, I'm sure we could figure out where a big chunk of this $24 billion went.
I don't want to pick on people personally.
Sure.
But to give, we kind of talked about who's on this ICH, Interagency Council for Homeless, because clearly they're not doing their job. So we want to kind of look into who's actually on this group. This is just one member of the group. Her name's Tina Del Carpio. Tina Del Carpio, pronouns they, them, joined the Cal ICH team as a research data analyst in December 2023. So we have no data on what her salary is, or I'm sorry, their salary, not her salary, their salary. They hold a PhD in biology from UCLA. Their doctoral research primarily concerns the genetics of wolves and dogs. However, their favorite research project focused on evaluating a program to increase diversity in graduate education. This project came from Tina's passion for equity, diversity, and inclusion. After graduate school, they were eager to continue using their data skills to support marginalized communities. Outside of work, Tina enjoys board gaming, and reading, watching sci-fi and fantasy media. They live in Los Angeles with their partner and 2 cats. And these are the people who don't know where your $24 billion went. So
they are an expert on dogs.
Yeah. So she's the research data analyst. And remember, they are the research data analyst. My apologies, Tina. They are the research data analyst. And remember the video? That girl said she had no data. They have no data since 2021. So, Tina, your email's not there prominently, but can you explain where the data is? Because we don't have it since 2021. Last thing I want to talk about before we log off for the day. This is what we're talking about with Newsom. Let's see. He was going to cut. Blah, blah, blah. He said he wants to drain all remaining funding for $500 million program to keep existing affordable housing affordable, cut $152 million from a state program for first-time home buyers, and trim $260 million from homeless housing assistance and prevention program. That's the state's main source of general homeless funding, and it has dodged cuts in January. So he is now cutting money from the homeless program, which I guess, hey, you know what? You proved you can't properly spend it, then you don't get more of it. So got to give credit where credit is due, right?
If he had just been like, maybe we need to delay Prop 1, wouldn't that be a better outcome?
Maybe he could be like, maybe we should figure out where all this money's going before we start spending more of it. So,
yeah. Like no new programs until we got a handle on what we got. And then I guess he tweeted today something about like there's I forget how many vacant government jobs in California, and he's like, oh, well, I should cut these jobs. And like, I don't. It's yeah. If they're vacant positions, we probably don't need them. So do cut them. But like, I'm not impressed.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's got to focus. He's got to try and stay relevant to keep his dying presidential aspirations alive at this point. Which I think this might be the final nail in the coffin. Any final thoughts? We went over a lot of stuff today. I mean, outside of just the normal pure rage at the government for mishandling our money.
Yeah. No, I'll stay silent so that I don't go on some rant for 5 minutes and make myself look totally unhinged here.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how this all kind of plays out with the electorate. Was it going to change a lot of minds? It may change a good amount of like independent voters' minds in terms of what they think about what the government is doing and kind of ask more questions. I think a lot of people farther on the left will probably think the issue is we need to spend more money and just be more accountable. But it's been a bad year for Democrats in Sacramento. They have a huge budget deficit. This looks really bad. They're still behind the 8 ball and they're spending more and more money, and we're not getting any results. And by the way, gas tax is going up in June or July. So have fun with that, California.
Yeah, July 1st, I think, is every year it increases by a certain amount.
Yeah. So I don't know if we've hit rock bottom yet in California. I'm sure a lot of people think we've hit rock bottom, but this is not great news. So we'll keep an eye on it and obviously update everybody as we find out more stuff. And if there is ever any data, I'm sure, I don't know, we'll definitely hop on it, but it may take another 5 years for them to get around to that data. So maybe they'll get to that data one day. We'll get to that data. Maybe I'll be back in that lady's office someday. Anyway, we look forward to seeing anybody Saturday at the California GOP convention. Again, we're going to have a table 1 to 4. We're going to be there live streaming a full podcast, the special California GOP edition live podcast. Any politicians who are in the area, candidates, stuff like that, who want to swing by, let us know. californiaunderground@protonmail.com. Trying to at least get it scheduled. It was a little hectic last time. It's kind of like people were just kind of rushing up to the table. So we'd like to try and get a little bit more organized this time so people know when to come by. But besides that, look forward to seeing everybody there. And I don't know, any other final thoughts or before we sign off?
No final thoughts.
Oh, check out the new merch. The local elections matter. I just got my shirt in today. It looks really good. It looks exactly how I want it designed to come out. I'll be rocking it at the convention. And then as well as Camille's designs, as well, California is worth fighting for. Check that out. And I guess we'll see you on the next one. Oh, wait, forgot to do the whole thing. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, review. helps with the algorithm. And best thing you can do, sharing is caring, is share this episode with someone, help spread the word, and helps increase the amount of people who check out our show. So with that, we'll see you on the next one. Later.
Thank you for listening to another episode of California Underground. If you like what you heard, remember to subscribe, like, and review it, and follow California Underground on social media for updates as to when new episodes are available.